All right, everybody, thanks for coming out. We'll go ahead and get started. Kirk was nice enough to come visit us right before he had to get on a plane tonight, so we'll let him speak and then get out of here so he can catch his flight. If you haven't gotten a raffle ticket, make sure you get a raffle ticket. We'll draw that. We got some ice fishing gear Shields donated. Shields has been an awesome partner for us. So make sure you buy some of your fishing stuff here if you buy fishing stuff, which we all do. I'll go ahead and turn it right over to Kirk. So I'll introduce Kirk. I met him at the Starvation Classic for the first time this year. He's been a good friend of the club, and he's a member now. And he took over being the tournament director for the Starvation Classic, which is I'll let him kind of describe that. But I'll go ahead and turn the time over to him. He's going to talk to us, and we're gonna hopefully be able to help him out a little bit with some of his goals. So yeah, go ahead.
I got one for Roger too. Okay.
So how many have fished the Classic? What do you know about the Classic? Anything? A little bit? So, the Starvation Classic is the longest running fishing tournament in the state of Utah. It's 32 years. It was started by some locals 32 years ago. This will be our 32nd year. Originally it was started to promote Duchesne County, try to bring some tourism in. If you've ever been out Starvation, it's really had a big evolution of resources pumped into it over the years at Fred Day State Park. And really a nice campground there now. But years ago it wasn't as nice, and so they were trying to promote it, and that's how this tournament got started. So over the years it's been ran by some government entities. It was taken over by George. He ran it for like 10 years as a volunteer, and he was done with it. And so 3 years ago I took it over from him to keep the tradition alive. Again, it's the longest running tournament. It's the largest tournament to my knowledge that's held in the state. And we're trying to grow that even more. So the first year that I ran it with him, there was 28 boats. This last year we had 40 boats. Gals are coming over from Idaho. They're coming from Colorado. We have a lot of Utah anglers. We even had some bass tournament guys come and join us this year, and they were pretty excited about having another opportunity to compete. So the mission of our organization, so UtahWalleye was started by me just to facilitate the tournament, basically. You have to be legal, you have to be able to buy insurance, and you have to be able to take payments and all that. So we formed a company to run the tournament. It's called UtahWalleye, and we want to provide educational, conservation, and competitive opportunities for walleye anglers. And we left our mission a little bit broader than just the Classic because we have a vision of growing into a circuit and having multiple tournaments throughout the state of Utah. And that's where hopefully some of the people in this room could help brainstorm and bring some ideas and maybe even some resources to the table to have that happen. But the vision of the Classic was to provide a sustainable event that supports the Utah walleye anglers, Starvation Reservoir, and our local communities. So it's a 3-day event. We rent the convention center there in Duchesne. We provide a meal. It's all donated by local businesses. The county gets involved. We have a partner called WCF, Wildlife Conservation Foundation. They partnered with us. They come in, they do a big raffle, $10,000 worth of guns, fishing equipment, and all the proceeds from the raffle are then donated back to the reservoir. And so we worked with the DWR this year with Natalie Boren, and we were able to donate $5,000 back to the reservoir for a conservation project. And that was all done by the anglers that supported the event. There are some other community partners that came in and bought raffle tickets, but a lot of it is the angling community. I would say a lot of people are intimidated by tournaments if they've never fished one. But our tournament is what I would consider a friendly tournament. There are some very good anglers that come and participate, but it's a very good community of anglers. A lot of these guys have been fishing with it, some of them for the 32 years. We have generational tournaments, anglers, that fathers, daughters, fathers and sons. It's really a fun event. There's some really key things that you have to have in order to pull off a successful tournament. One, you have to have a good angling community, which we have a really good base here in the state of Utah for that. Second, you have to have corporate support. There's no way we could pull off this tournament without corporate sponsorships. And so the oil and gas industry in the basin has really come out and helped support our event. We have our local technical college. All of our first place trophies are fabricated by local students at our fab shop. So they're all custom. You can see some examples there of what they've been able to create. So it's just really a good all-around event. You know, we're fulfilling the need of the angling community. We're donating back to the resource. We have corporate participation, because I can tell you tournaments cannot last without organization. You know, if you're depending on one or two people to run an organization, it'll die with them. And that's what was happening to the Classic until a few years ago. Now we have a really good broad base of support and a great deal of people wanting us to take our show on the road. So that's why I wanted to come here and extend a personal invitation to all of you. If you'd like to come out and participate in the tournament, I'd love to have you. It's always the weekend after Labor Day in September. We've already booked our permit for next year, so we're all set for 2023. We have that permit in place now, so the dinner's on Friday night and the tournament goes on Saturday and Sunday. It's a catch and release tournament. You can keep 6 fish, 1 over 24 inches per angler, and then we release those. And I can't remember the statistics, but I think we had 3 fish die in the tournament last year out of about 400 fish probably were caught between the tournament and the pre-fish. So, if you want to participate, our website is UtahWalleye.com. I'll open up the registration probably in a few months, and you can just register online. If you're going to do it, I'd recommend getting rooms early, because in Duchesne, the rooms are harder to get. I mean, there's a lot of people that come out. There's a nice campground there you can book. Bring your campers. But with that, I think, let's see, who was Big Fish, Tristan? Mike, you guys fished in it last year.
Yeah, we got big fish before the tournament.
Yeah. We always have several fish that come in the 7 to 10 pound class range in the tournament, and multiples. And I think that's always surprising to people that aren't familiar with starvation, that there are that quality of fish in there. Some of the anglers may not like us saying that. But it's really cool to see the resource thriving and doing well. The DWR is really working hard to maintain that fishery. There's a great deal of eater-sized fish in the reservoir right now, so if you do want to come out and fish it, we encourage you to keep those 15-inch fish and smaller. Take those home, make some fish tacos. Let's thin out that population a little bit. I don't know how many of you like to angle for walleye in here, but it's by far my favorite. Yeah, I like that. Good. We got some great guys in here that understand walleye and part of the Rocky Mountain Anglers. We've always appreciated Rocky Mountain Anglers supporting the event. Over the years, they've come out and brought teams. They used to donate some prizes to the event, and so we've always appreciated that. I used to fish in it a lot as an angler before becoming the tournament director. Rocky Mountain Anglers has always been a really good supporter. So thank you for that, and look forward to working with you in the future. So, are there any questions about the Classic that I can answer for you?
So do you want to talk a little bit about your aspirations for expanding the circuit, and what we might be able to do as a club? And
yeah, how many of you are familiar with the Wyoming Stampede? I've never fished it personally. I just follow it online, but it's a circuit. It's a multi-tournament event. Brings in 100 plus boats per event. Multiple, I think there's four tournaments, and then a 5th that's invitation only if you score high enough. Very well sponsored. I think Ranger Boats is a big part of that event, but they give away like $50,000 prize money every event.
There we go. That's what we need.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more serious than our event, we give away about $10,000 in prize money to the anglers. I should have mentioned that, it is an 80-20 payout, so 80% of the gate goes back to the anglers that place in the top 10 spots. So their event, again, they figured it out. Their event started, it's not as old as the Classic. I think the Walleye Stampede is much younger, and has really grown into being a well-ran circuit. A lot of the Idaho guys have hit me up and asked that we do maybe something at Willard, and they would like to come down and support that, and they'd like to get a circuit going.
Is that what you're targeting next? Is maybe to expand first, or?
Yeah, I think if we could get some corporate sponsorship and some volunteer help, to look at a Willard Bay, I think that we could pull off. You have to buy your permits pretty much a year in advance, so you have to do a lot of planning around other events. It's a learning curve, but there are a lot of private events and smaller tournaments that are held on these reservoirs, and you have to be in there pretty early.
Is the permit the biggest cost?
Insurance, trophies, it takes quite a bit, and it's mostly volunteer time. I mean, it takes about 10 people to pull off our event for 3 days.
Do you have a minimum of corporate sponsor amount, or do you just take
Yeah, what does it take to be a market sponsor?
So we have different sponsorship levels. A marquee sponsor is $1,000 or more. So we've had a few of those. We have some $500 sponsorships, at $250 and $100.
Okay. And so how many, in order to pull off the tournament, about how many marquee sponsors would you need?
Right now we have 3.
Cool. We're going to work on some of that. I'm talking to Shields on Monday. So
Nice.
we'll see.
Question?
Yeah, I don't have a question or comment about how many people here have fished a tournament. If you never catch a fish, it's exciting. I mean, it really is, and you never know what's going to happen. My partner in the boat, it was his boat, and he's a good walleye guy. And we pre-fished up in Wyoming, Glendale or one, I can't remember. But we were pulling them out, and it's a 2-day tournament. Pre-fished it for a week. I told my wife at the time, I got to be there. We got to practice. But anyway, we had all our holes picked out and the weather changed, and we got nothing first day. But it was my first tournament. The second day, I caught a 5.5-pound walleye, and he kept the bow of the boat on the shore in the wind and held it in one spot. And then this guy hit like 3 times, 4 times before I hooked him. It was 5.5 pounds. So we got 20 minutes left in the tournament. Actually, 20 minutes, and all we had was 1 fish. We're not going to win it, but they had a $1,000 prize for the comeback.
Yeah.
And I says, we're going over here by this rock we fished this morning. He said, there's no fish there. I says, shut up and go. This time I know there's fish. Anyway, he threw a minnow out on a bluegill hook, and he saw this fish come by. He says, oh man, that's a big fish. The second cast he had, it was 10.5 pounds. And we had 20 minutes left in the tournament. So we had to get back to the base in 20 minutes, and we won $1,000. Wow. The most weight coming from nothing to 16 pounds was a winner.
Awesome.
So I thought, well, this is easy. I haven't seen anything since. That was like 14 years ago.
Yeah, you hear so many of those stories, the last 5 minutes,
really
10 minutes
know
of a
how to
tournament, guys sticking big fish.
But it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, it's very low key. It's not high pressure. It's not like the National Walleye Tour where they're following around with cameras. These are just a bunch of guys like us, that have either they're working or they're retired and they're just there for a good time and catching up with old friends and going out and fishing. And you might win some money and you might not, but a lot of them don't care. They're there for the event. And guys were just as excited to win a gun in a raffle as they were to, go out and fish. we're hoping to keep it alive, and we can't do it without support. And that all starts with anglers. If we don't have anglers, we don't have a tournament. So I would appreciate your support and any sharing. And if we do want to start a Willard Bay event, you know, I'm going to need your help.
Yeah.
You know, I could use your help to get that.
And I know we can come up with the volunteer hours probably to help you put on the tournament. It's going to be getting the sponsorship and then just promoting it, I think. And it sounds like we have to target 2024
Yeah, I mean, you
at
could
earliest.
Yeah, you could maybe get a fall tournament on the schedule if you started like right away. You know, I wouldn't, but I don't know what Willards. I don't fish Willard, so I don't know what the ramp conditions look like in the fall, if that's a possibility.
That's the kicker.
It's
Yeah.
pretty thin, man.
Right, so Willard is probably more of a spring event, right? Maybe an early.
It's still dicey
Depending
then.
on water.
What's that?
All depending on the water.
Yeah, just depending on the water. Yeah. But yeah, so that's what we're hoping to do. I would like to see it get to, you know, a stampede level.
How would we need to get, is the sponsorship information on the website?
Yeah, I'll send it to Mike and he can share it with you guys.
All right.
Sponsorship letter, it's just a form letter I have. I haven't updated it for 2023, but every year I do it, I get more people wanting to be a part of it. You know, everybody wants to be a part of something that they can belong to, and I think we've built something here that resonates.
Do they always run Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or do they
Yeah.
run Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Just always Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yep. Yep, Friday's your pre-fish, Saturday is your first day of the tournament, Sunday's your second. Weigh-ins are between 3 and 3:30, depending on your flight. I hope we get to 3 flights. You start getting 60 boats blasting off, it's quite a sight. Last year 40 was really cool to see that many boats blasting off at daylight.
And is it just like the alarm goes off and the gun's fired, or did you say go, or how does that whole thing kick off?
Yeah, so at the dinner, angler dinner, everybody draws a number.
Oh,
You know, we have a poker chip and you draw your boat number. And that's what the number that you'll use on the blast off. We'll open the boat ramp around 4:35 a.m. and people can launch. And then you just float in the bay until just before daylight. We'll start, and I have a bullhorn and I'll call numbers.
they just take off?
Yeah, and so, again, it's a community, so everybody kind of gets to know each other, and they know each other's numbers, they know each other's boats, and so you follow, you know, if you're number 5, you follow number 4 out of the bay. And then if you're in the first flight, you have to be back by 3 o'clock. And if you're in the second flight, which would be half of the field, so like, you know, number 21 would have to be back at 3:30, get an extra 30 minutes.
It's intense. I didn't expect it. I was rushing with the adrenaline, and
Yeah.
you can ask my fishing partners. Like, man, you need to settle down, because I was just all over the boat, just excited, because there's just all that anticipation before launch, and I think it's a pretty cool thing to have, you know, 60 boats floating out there like spot locked, and they're all just sitting in the same spot, and then all of a sudden they just start going off as soon as the sun breaks. It's pretty cool.
And it's still open to the public. The reservoir's still open to the public
Yeah.
during tournament, right?
Yeah.
So, you ever take the weekend?
2 years ago, we had there was a triathlon scheduled that same weekend, and so we had people in the water at daylight during our blast off. That was not fun. So Dylan Gill is our park manager, and that was his first year, and so he's learned he's not booking anything else during our tournament ever again. So part of that was my fault. I didn't have it on the calendar soon enough, and so it gave that, you know, an opportunity. It's a state park, so they can't, you know, discriminate by any means, but as soon as we were on the calendar, then they can have that option. So, yeah, tournament, this if you want to do a tournament, this is a great one to do it on. Very low pressure, a lot of fun, good time, good weekend. Might even learn a few things if you watch some of these guys fish, and they'll share with you a little bit. Walleye are funny. A lot of guys go out pre-fish, catch the heck out of them. Tournament time comes, it's a different game.
Do you have guys that win it like year after year, or every
Yeah,
year,
there's
2 or 3 years, you know?
Yeah, there's some people that have some patterns that they always seem to figure out.
If you want to know more, so Ben actually did a presentation after he won the Walleye Classic 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He did a presentation, so we have that on our YouTube channel, and he goes into detail about if you're interested in tournament fishing. He kind of breaks it down and talks about, you know, some things you should know, some things you should prepare for, things like that. It was really helpful. I watched it probably 5 times before I took on the tournament.
Is he a guide?
No,
No.
he's a club member, and he just dang good fisherman. He's put in the hours, and he knows the waters. And,
Yeah, in fact, I think they took second this year,
yeah,
if I remember right.
they got hinched out.
Yep.
Is there a reason why it's in September versus the other months? Just curious.
Tradition. I don't know. It's just been on the calendar so long for that date. I mean, people are already taking vacation time off from work for that weekend ahead of time and booking their reservations. And we could possibly do another starvation tournament as well. We've talked about that. We don't want to mess with Ketchick here, obviously. That's a June tournament. It's very well established. And, but we've talked about doing another starvation event as well that we could do earlier in the year.
What about doing some night tournaments?
Yeah, there has been some experimentation in the past with night tournaments. They just haven't been well.
Night fishing is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've never done it.
Oh, it's fun. I mean, I'm going to say, really?
Yeah, that's my favorite time to fish, actually. But no, I mean I would certainly consider that too, especially if we could get enough interest.
I think it would be helpful, maybe, and I'll get with you, and if we can kind of get a checklist of what we need to get that off the ground. I think the club's really, one of our goals this year, so we kind of met as club officers, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but one of our 3 values are about competition, conservation, and education. Those are our 3 values of our club. We'd really like to, dig into those this year, and so part of that would be expanding this tournament would help us get into that, especially since we're not putting on our own inter-club tournaments as much anymore. So that's something we'd really like to help push forward, I think.
Yeah, we get some added money from some of our sponsors, and that always helps bring in anglers. We understand it's expensive, to buy your fuel and your hotel rooms and your food, come out and practice. That's why the county really loves to support it, because they know it brings people into town for them.
Yeah, for sure.
So they're willing to help us make sure it happens. So yeah, I mean, love to explore it more deeply with the club and individuals if you'd like.
Thanks, Kurt.
Well, thank you for having me.
Applying sponsors, just join
So, no. So I'm a business guy, so I know a lot of folks locally that have different types of businesses. And so a lot of it has been personal relationships. I mean, that's really what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
So, somebody that has a business, somebody that has a business, and if they can donate through the 501c3, they can write it off on their taxes. They can just support the event, get some marketing for it. Like I said, everybody has a little bit different motive. The tech college, the students get involved with it, and they build our trophies. We do some videos with them, and so they get the exposure for that. A lot of our guys that fish in the tournament they're from industry. They're the working class guys. They're welders. They're driving trucks, and so that they're making those connections with those students. Oil and gas industry with all the ESG requirements on them now, for them to be able to donate to an event where conservation is supported, that looks good for their audits. So they're always looking. In our area, oil and gas is a big deal, but sometimes it's villainized, and so they're always looking for ways to promote their industry in a good way, and so they've resonated with us and done that. Trying to think who else. Ben Kurtz is a local guide. He helps support it. And, he runs some stuff on his website, and it helps draw business for him. And so everybody has a little bit different motive when they support something, right? Maybe they are into conservation, and we're certainly about that. Or maybe they selfishly want their logo out there on the internet supporting our event. We're all about that. So yeah, but sponsorships usually come from relationships, people that or friends of people that that also, you know, have your same core values.
Thanks.
So yeah, anything else? I'll go catch a plane, I guess.
Yeah, we'll let you catch your plane, and we'll definitely be getting with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I plan to join this year, so pay my dues when you get your Venmo up. And
Okay.
I'll wear your RMA proudly. So.
All righty.
Okay, thanks guys, appreciate your time.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce Kirk here. I'm going to get his slide up. Behind you. There we go.
It's coming up real fast.
So I got a little wand too. You can actually advance it yourself since we're doing it on mine. So this is a pointer, and then just going back.
So this is just the black button is advance?
Yep, and then you can go back to go back.
Afterwards is in perfect.
Well, I'll introduce Craig. I actually didn't get a chance to even introduce myself before the meeting started.
You're good.
I gotta get used to this. Being the president's weird. But really appreciate Craig coming out. He was gonna speak last month, but had some things come up, and we appreciate you rescheduling and coming back to talk to you about ice fishing. It's something I'm wanting to get into a little bit more too. So, yeah, introduce yourself a little bit, Craig.
Sure. Craig Walker, good evening. I'm the Assistant Chief of Fisheries with Division of Wildlife Resources. I've been working for the outfit for, it doesn't seem possible, 23 years. Started down in Price as a biologist there, moved up to Salt Lake back in, whatever it was, 2010, something like that. Anyway, I've worked my way up. Now I just kind of puppeteer the folks in the regions and let them do good things after talking with me a little bit. Natalie is one of those people who has done some amazing things out in the northeastern part of Utah. For those of you that know Calvin Black, he's another one of my go-tos as far as getting things on the ground. My primary interest in the state is cool and warm water fisheries. That's kind of where I went to graduate school, was Mississippi State, so I'm very familiar with cool and warm water fish. Those species are near and dear to me, and I know that they're near and dear to you guys instead of those cold, slimy things that we call trout. Now, I'm a fan of trout too, but not quite as much as some of the fish that I show in a lot of the pictures here. Before I get into this presentation, something that was top of mind this past week, for those of you that didn't actually hear the KSL interview I did, we've had a slew of record fish submissions over the past, well, since 2019, since COVID. Although we certified 11 new records this past year, we had a lot more submissions than that. And a recent submission competition brought that to mind for me. We had 2 tiger trout caught within a day of one another that would have both been state records, but because of the timing of the submissions, the smaller fish was submitted a day after the larger fish, so it didn't actually receive a record, but was still a record fish, if that makes sense. Interestingly enough, they both came out of reservoirs in the southeast, and the segue to this is they both came through the ice. One of them was a 31.5-inch fish through the ice, and for those of you that have ice fished,
Tiger trout?
Fishing a tiger trout vertical through the ice on, let's call it 8-pound test, and having that just go around the hole as that thing fights you is let's just say it's nerve-wracking. And I felt for that guy and was really excited to see the picture of his fish that he brought through. The 29, actually it was a 30-inch fish that came out of Schofield was no slouch either. So we had a Joe's Valley fish at 31.5 and a 30-inch fish come out of Schofield within a day of one another. Just some amazing fish coming out of our waters right now. And why I'm here tonight to encourage you all to engage in what I view as one of the biggest areas in growth that we have in the sport of fishing, not only in Utah but in the country, which is ice fishing. And it's that way for a variety of reasons. I think that ice fishing has grown in popularity because it's relatively inexpensive to get into. As a state employee that works for the Division of Wildlife Resources, sadly, my wife will not allow me to buy a boat of any substance that I would consider to be worth owning. But ice fishing is the great equalizer for me. Ice fishing is what I've termed, and I mentioned to somebody earlier, it's my poor man's boat. It gets me anywhere I want to go on the water relatively cheaply. It takes a little while to get there, unless I got a snow machine, but it does allow me to access places that I normally can't access unless I, do what any smart person does, which is just know somebody who owns a boat. Anyway, the other thing is the modern electronics that are out there that were initially employed aboard a boat and are now being used in the sport of ice fishing, they're a game changer. I mean, I grew up ice fishing, and my dad tried to get a scroller one time and use that on the ice, and that was just a disaster. I mean, with cold water, cold temperatures, they didn't work worth a flip. The electronics you have now are protected against the cold, protected against the water. You can take them out anywhere. They're portable, and they can give you a huge advantage that you didn't have just even 5, 10, 15 years ago. To me, that makes the sport of ice fishing, rather than kind of luck as falls, putting lines out in a certain configuration and hoping that fish move through that arrangement you've got out there, into almost like sight fishing. And if you watch a lot of the ice fishing anglers that are out there right now, the modern anglers are going out there, they're using electronics to try and spot the fish, and they're using some of these 360 electronics to actually try and spot the fish at distance and move and move and move and find those fish the same way you would do if you were using a boat. It turns it into almost sight fishing. It's almost, once you actually get on the fish also, it's almost like a video game. It's very addicting when you can actually see fish, react to your lures. How many people have actually fished for lake trout through the ice? You know what I'm talking about. I mean, when you're sitting there and there's nothing on the bottom except for maybe you might see a small arc that looks like something, and suddenly you're like, you don't spook them, but you get them to come up off, and you see that arc come up off the bottom. That's addicting. It's just, and then enticing it to actually bite without spooking it, it's just a crazy aspect of the sport. I mentioned the ease of access, the fact that you don't have to have a boat. That's another reason why this has grown in popularity. You get to fish open water on waters that don't afford boat access. So when you start getting up into the mid and high elevation lakes that you normally don't fish with a boat, and float tubes aside, right? I mean, you can get out there with a float tube, kick boat, that type of thing. But a traditional boat that's a little bit more comfortable than being wet all day, this is allowing you to kind of play that game on some of these inaccessible water bodies that you can't get on a traditional boat. The other thing that's making this popular is the variety of opportunities. Ice fishing, like if you go after kokanee from a boat, you've got to have downriggers, you've got to have flashers, you've got to have, go through the whole thing. Okay, now you want to use that same boat to go after something else, let's say striped bass at Lake Powell. You've got to have this, you've got to have that, you've got to diversify. Ice fishing, really the only thing that you have to diversify is maybe your line strength, unless you want to go for, some line pound test records. But your terminal tackle, your lures, the size of your lures, the baits that you're using, that's really all you need to change up. Most of the rods that are out there are, medium heavy. You're not trying to fish finesse for the most part. Some of my buddies who fish panfish, they do have some loose rods. But for the most part, you can use a single rod and catch multiple species. That's what I usually like to do. I kind of go on the cheap. I've fallen in love with the Ugly Ice series of rods that I bought like 10 or 15 years ago, because just that you can catch everything from splake to bluegill, and you can use that and not have to have an investment of variety of gears, and still go after a bunch of different species and go after trophy fish as well as panfish. The social aspect is another component that you can have it or not have it. If you go to Echo Reservoir, I don't know if anybody's driven by Echo Reservoir recently in the winter, it looks like a tent city. You can be part of the tent city if you want to be part of the tent city and enjoy that social aspect of fishing, fine. Or you can segregate yourself on another part of the ice and still catch fish, still access fish. So you have the ability to adapt your experience to whatever you want to have it be. And then it allows you to have an expanded fishing season on reservoirs. So, you know, there was a time for a lot of people where they fished a reservoir and then when, you know, it locked up with ice, they were done. You know, they went on to something else. They went on to a chukar, whatever. Now you can actually still access that water body. Again, with the gear that's out there, with these electronics, with the clothing that's now out there, you can pretty much comfortably go out and access ice fishing opportunities. Whereas when I was growing up, it was only for the most hardy of anglers who wanted to go out there and brave the cold. So, I talked about it was only for the most hardy of anglers. That's not the case anymore. If you go out to those echo tent cities, whatever it is, and the adjacent groups of anglers that are spread out, you've got families, you've got groups of friends that just happen to say, hey, what do you want to do this Saturday? Instead of playing cards, they go out and they go ice fishing. You've got novice anglers. We are actually tracking through an ice addiction fishing tournament that's being held in Utah on multiple reservoirs and in multiple states. There's part of the requirement for them to hold their tournament with our permit for them is to have them survey their participants. And one of the big things we wanted to know about their participants was, is this a gateway drug, quote unquote, for fishing for you? Are you a new angler? Ice fishing is the ultimate recruitment sport for fishing. Anybody can do it, right? Again, it's not like parents trying to buy ice hockey equipment for their kids. It's more like parents saying, hey, do you want to play soccer? Because all I got to get you is a pair of cleats. I don't have to get you, $300, $400, $500 worth of gear. It's super cool for novice anglers to get involved, and we're finding out that that is indeed the case. Similarly, first-time license purchasers. This is a thing that people can dip their toe in the water of fishing and say, do I want to do it or not? Again, because it has those social aspects, because it's cheap relatively among fishing opportunities, and because pretty much anywhere above a certain elevation you can go and experience it if it's got ice on it in good weather. This is an entry-level sport where people are actually saying, I'm going to try it. I'm going to get a 3-day license. I'm going to check this out. I'm going to just see if if fishing intrigues me enough to participate. In addition to that, similar to the walleye tournament guys, the Bens of the world that are serious about angling, targeting specific species, wanting to go after that trophy fish, wanting to drive all the way up to Fish Lake or Flaming Gorge or whatever it is and target lake trout, this is the sport for them as well. I mentioned those 2 tiger trout. Those 2 tiger trout probably weren't being caught at Schofield and Joe's Valley Reservoir any other time of the year. But when you go out ice fishing, you have the electronics and you have the ability to actually target a size of fish that you're after or a species of fish you're after, again, these experienced anglers are finding a great deal of success. Brown trout is another species that you can be fairly successful with through the ice. For that reason, and all this stuff is kind of linked, if experienced anglers are doing it, there's money in it for guides. And more we're seeing that guides are taking their clients out, and the clients don't have to do anything. They sit in a wonderful warm hut and have meals provided for them, and the guy goes out and he drills a hole and finds out where the fish are and says, okay, boys, let's move the shelter over here, and you guys sit here, and I'll get everything set up for you, and put them on fish, and they can have a great time in a fairly comfortable environment and pay a lot of money to do it. So it is becoming an aspect of the sport that's growing. In addition to that, I mentioned the ice addiction tournament. That's not the only ice fishing tournament out there. More and more we're seeing, similar to what's been historically a common practice in the Midwest, we're seeing that tournaments are becoming a way for ice anglers to congregate, interact with them, one another, compete for the resource and really harness that. So I mentioned low investment for gear requirements. You could go out and just start from scratch and just buy it all at once if you want to, or you could be like me and I've got stuff that has been handed down to me through time and looks like it's been handed down to me through time. Sleds, augers, the electronics I mentioned before, ice rods and reels, spring bobbers, an ice hut, jigs, ice flies, tip-ups, chairs, winter clothing, buckets, bags, bait, cleats, gearboxes, bags, utility knives. Right there, all of that, you can find out here, guaranteed, every single piece of it. At the end of the day, the things that are going to cost you the most amount of money are your electronics and your auger. After that, you're talking, and your ice hut, sorry. After those three things, you're talking about probably $150 total for all the other stuff. Your ice hut's going to be about $300. Your electronics, probably comparable these days to electronics that you buy for your boat. And then your auger, which used to be a behemoth that you used to have to carry around, that was a 2-stroke gas engine, pull start, and sometimes started and didn't start, it was super finicky like a lot of 2-strokes are in the cold. Now you go out and you get a DeWalt drill and an auger bit, and that's it. So you're talking for that probably $200 total for the package in a lot of instances. That'll get you started. And I was a little sketchy about using, battery-powered stuff on the ice when they first came out. They're phenomenal. They really are. I cannot brag about them enough. Of course, I still own a 2-stroke because I can't find anybody to buy it from me. But no, they're an amazing technological advance, and they've got all-in-one kits that you can get that it's basically an electric auger, or you can go out, like I said, and just get a drill and get the bit, and that works just fine too. One thing, there's been some recent news stories about people that have gone out and disappeared. Thanks. There's been some recent news stories about people that have gone out and disappeared. They found tracks leading to holes. Not anything anybody wants themselves to do, and definitely not if we're talking about the social aspect and taking family out and taking friends out. Not something you want to see or witness happen. Falling through the ice. It's like a lot of addicting things. You tend to push the outer limits of the envelope as far as the shoulder portions of the season. As far as ice on, and I've done it, and I probably shouldn't have, but going out on 2 inches of ice, not the brightest thing in the world to do. It'll hold you, for sure. It will hold you, but it's not going to be 2 inches everywhere across the surface of the water. That's the problem with ice, is it's not uniform. And you've always got to be aware of that and always checking the depth and making sure that you're on safe ice.
2 inches might hold you. It ain't gonna hold.
No, I mean,
that's one of the things I've been most worried about trying is my fat butt on the ice. That's fall through.
That's why here, they talk about one person with gear is 4 inches, and that's, to me, that's about the beginning of when I feel at least comfortable.
Yeah, I think I'm like in snowmobile.
To be honest, you're not joking. For me, 6 inches is where I'm like, all right, I have nothing to worry about. Period. End of story. I'm good to go. Anything less than that, like I said, because of that lack of uniformity, it can get a little sketchy at times. And you definitely, I've fallen through once, and was scared for a millisecond, because as I was going through, I'm like, oh my, and that millisecond was only a millisecond because I hit bottom. And I was so thankful that I hit bottom. But, you know, that's not usually where the fish are. So, anyway, be careful out there. Don't fish alone. That's one of the big things. I know it's a great solitary sport. Generally speaking, you know, going fishing by yourself is wonderful. Can be very relaxing. This is not one of those things where you should go out by yourself. If something does go wrong, you have no safety net. You have no ability for anybody to give you any sort of assistance, and you know, things can go wrong pretty quickly. If you are going out there with other people, still share your trip plans. I mean, my wife harps on me about this all the time on anything I do. She's like, just where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going, you know, I'm going to Boulders. Where in the Boulders? You know, it's a big place. Be specific, share your trip plans with somebody before you leave, just in case something does happen. You know, it would be nice for somebody to actually find you out there. If you were able to get out of the water and, you know, but not make it back to your vehicle, they could still, you know, find you and hopefully save you. Warm clothing, like anything involving the winter, make sure you are equipped with warm clothing and that you are overdressed. You can always strip stuff off. You know, do the layer thing, play that game. I usually bring a bag with me and just throw stuff in there as I don't need it, or if the wind picks up, as I need it, whatever it is, it allows you to play the layer game and stay warm. Ice picks. How many know what I'm talking about when I say ice picks? Okay, they're just two little handheld things that go around your neck. They've got kind of like a coil on them, and they clip together, and they're designed to allow you to actually have some grab when you're trying to get out of the ice if you happen to fall through. Not something I would have ever thought of back in the day, but I think it would be a worthwhile investment, super cheap. Throw bag, similar to, you know, being aboard a boat. If somebody does go in the water, you want to have a safety device like a PFD to be able to toss to somebody. Same thing. Throw bag is basically the same throw bag you would have if you were rafting, right? Have that aboard, or have somebody in your party have something like that. A whistle, you know, for yourself. If you fall in, you could fall in and nobody would know out on the ice. You know, it's like any outdoor environment. Sound does not carry all that well. Whistle noises would carry a lot better than you going, help. So, you know, pack a whistle, that's also an idea. From a body maintenance, hypothermia, energy standpoint, staying warm not only involves clothing, but also involves food and water. Make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're eating while you're out there. That's going to help you stay warm on the ice and be safe. Bring a charged cell phone. If something happens to your buddy out there, it'd be nice to be able to call somebody. Not a lot of places have cell service, but quite a few do, right? I mean, there's a lot of places more and more that have that cell coverage that you might be able to get into. At the very least, you have the opportunity to rush back to a vehicle, get into cell coverage, and make that call. Fire starting tools, if somebody does go through and you are in an environment where you don't have easy access to a vehicle to get somebody off and they are starting to get hypothermic, it would be nice to be able to start a fire and warm them up if you don't have a heater or other heating element in your shelter. And similar to the throw bag, the PFD thing, more and more people are wearing the activated PFDs that people have around on boats. Same thing here, just if you end up going in the water, you're at least floating, you're not going under the ice, right? So, now that we're done with the safety aspect of things, let's talk about actually getting going and getting fishing. Setting up, it's It's a lot like going out there and using your electronics on a boat when you're trying to find schools of fish in open water, right? That's the same type of thing. You are going out, you're punching test holes. I mentioned those look down 360-degree sonars that are out there right now. I don't own one personally. They're kind of the thing that's come about for ice fishing over the past 2 or 3 years. They're phenomenal. You'll see people just punch a hole, put that down there, look, 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 and it directs them about how far and in what direction to go punch their next hole and their next hole. And they dial in on that school of fish that they're able to see at distance and then get over it. And once they're over it, depending on the type of fish, they might be over it for the rest of the day. And if you can manage that, you can have a lot of fun. You can do a lot of hooting and hollering and ripping lips all day long. Other fish species, you do have to play the chase game and try to catch up with them, especially if they're moving through the water. Kokanee is a good example. They kind of, they'll come into your set and then they'll disappear for an hour and a half and then they'll come into your set. You can play the waiting game if you want to and be bored in between each time they come through your gear, or you can chase them a little bit and be more of an active pursuer using that technique. When you're going out there, again, it's no different than if you were trying to find places to pitch or find places to troll. You're looking for similar habitat transition zones. You're looking for bays. You're looking for bottom structure. And as I mentioned before, the one thing with the electronics that you're looking for is fish. Find the fish. That's the key. Don't find good habitat that doesn't have fish on it and assume that, well, they're going to move through eventually. You'll be a very disappointed ice angler for the majority of your career if you play that game. Chase the fish. Baiting, tipping, it depends on what you're after. You've got wax worms and mealworms that you can use that are really great for salmonid species trout. They're also great for panfish, everything from bluegill to perch to crappie. You've got, the bait products also, like the crappie nibbles and that type of thing, when you're talking about fishing smaller jigs. Once you actually are, let's say, getting into some fish and those fish are eligible for use as bait, either parts or eyes, for example, don't feel bad about yanking perch eyes out and using them as bait. If you do, you miss out on a really amazing aspect of perch fishing. It's incredible what a fresh piece of fish does from a scent standpoint versus all of the bait products that are out there versus wax worms versus impregnated baits, whatever it is. Throw those all away. If you can get perch eyes and you're fishing for perch, use perch eyes. It's amazing the difference. Plus they stay on pretty well too. In addition to the perch eyes or parts, dead slab fish that you would purchase at a store that's preserved or that you've caught yourself and preserved, like a Utah chub, sucker, carp, whatever it is. Those slab pieces of meat can be really effective if you're fishing for splake, lake trout, various things. I mentioned the bait products. Soft plastics, we've all played the I only use artificials game, right? A lot of us pride ourselves in that. There's a movement in what has been traditionally a bait fishing sport, which is ice fishing, to move just to soft plastics and actually use soft plastics to entice a bite. It works. There's no two ways about it. I'm still more of a tipper than most, but Ken Sorensen, who's a buddy of mine, works with Division Wildlife Resources. He got me started fooling around, especially with bluegill and some panfish, on using some of these just soft plastic tails that are super active in the water. And yeah, if they're visual predators, like a bluegill, they work phenomenally. They really do. Whatever bait you're using out there, grab your proclamation, your guidebook, reference the bait section, make sure you're adhering to the bait rules in Utah. They've changed a little bit over the past couple of years. I'm not going to go into that tonight, but just make sure you're keeping up with that. So, where to go? Depends on what you want. You know, and for me, that varies. Some days I want to go and just catch a whole bunch of fish, right? Other times, I don't really care whether I catch 2 fish all day, but I am going to catch a lump if it kills me out there. And other times, I'm very keyed in on catching a particular species, right? And wanting to focus on a particular target. So, if you want to catch lots of fish, panfish is the way to go. There's no 2 ways about it. And if you want to catch a lot of panfish, I just put an assortment up here of places to go. Fish Lake, Manaway, Pineview, Rockport, Echo, Hiram, Pelican with an asterisk because it's coming back. It's not quite there yet, but it will be in another couple of years. What's interesting, and probably many of you have either noticed it or been involved in some of these team meetings and groups to talk about management plans for various waters that are managing with panfish, we're not only using them as something for people to catch, we're using them as forage for a lot of our predator populations. And for that reason, we want to have a robust forage population that waxes and wanes. Sometimes we'll have crappie that are really abundant, and the perch aren't so abundant. And 3 years from then, that scale will tip, and the perch will be really abundant, but the crappie not so abundant. We recognize that, and for that reason, we're trying to put a diverse array of forage fish in there so that we're able to always have food for our piscivorous predators in that water, right? With an eye on maintaining the quality, the growth, the condition of those predators in the water. Well, there's a side benefit when we talk about those forage also being panfish, because that means that you have the ability to go in and be fishing with the exact same bait, the exact same setup, and have an opportunity to catch bluegill, crappie, perch, all out of the same hole, all in the same location. More and more that's becoming common in Utah, and it's out of design. Like I mentioned, this is something we're trying to do. So don't be surprised if you have an opportunity to catch multiple species that way. The second lots of fish category, although panfish is probably the best way to do that, is trout. There's no 2 ways about it. You can go to places like Schofield, Strawberry, Echo, Manaway, East Canyon. Again, this is a smattering of a whole bunch of other opportunities out there. And catch 12, 14, 18 trout in a day, which, you know, by my standards growing up, that's insane. By anybody's standards, as far as catch rates go, that's insane. And that's where ice fishing again becomes kind of that great equalizer where you can come in and even with a fish that is super mobile, not staying in one place like panfish, you can find them and you can do some serious damage. And you know, you might have to move a little bit, maybe, but to pull down anywhere from a dozen to 20, you know, rainbow trout, for example, in a day, I don't know that anybody would be disappointed with that, even if you don't like to catch the sliders. So. Large fish. Like I mentioned at the outset of this, the tiger trout that were recently caught at Schofield and Joe's Valley, those are not unique to Schofield and Joe's Valley. Another thing by design that we have been trying to do in the state is trying to use that predator-prey balance to maximize the quality of our predators and maximize the number of our panfish in the waters. We're getting pretty good at it in a variety of places. Schofield Reservoir, historically known for its rainbow trout fishing. We designed a game plan there to control Utah chub using tiger trout and using Bonneville cutthroat trout, Bear Lake Bonneville cutthroat trout, and that was about 10 years ago. That game plan was working, but it was not working very quickly. And we got some pushback from local anglers at Schofield Reservoir saying, we want this fixed now. We want the chub problem fixed now. And they were pressing for us to go in and treat it again. Treatment's expensive. We've tried to get out of the game of doing maintenance treatments on reservoirs and just keep resetting. That's not the game we like to play these days. So instead, we started to move into the warm and cool water predator mode. We put wiper in there. We put sterile walleye in there. We have tiger trout in there. We have tiger muskie in there. And we have the Bear Lake Bonneville cutthroat trout in there, in addition to the Utah chub. And we're stocking fall rainbows at 10 to 12 inches, giving ice anglers an opportunity to catch rainbow trout, having those trout that survive be available to spring angling opportunities, and then having trout that make it through that gauntlet come through the next year as probably 2-year-old fish, 2 to 3-year-old fish, and provide some of those larger fish opportunities during their second year in the reservoir.
That was Schofield, you said?
Yeah, more and more that's our game plan on a lot of these reservoirs. You can go to Schofield Reservoir and catch, like I said, you have an opportunity to catch 5 different predatory species, basically using the same gear. To me, it's our way of giving the people what they want. They can catch numbers, they can catch diversity, they can catch size, they can have trophy, they can have quality. Anyway. So trout, splake, lake trout, Schofield, Strawberry, Flaming Gorge, Joe's Valley, Fish Lake, all great places to go after those. Walleye, as we just talked about, I was encouraged to go up to Starvation next weekend and ice fish. I guess right now that is just the bite for walleye through the ice at Starvation is off the hook. So if you want to go catch some walleye through the ice, Starvation would be the place to go right now. Big Sand Wash has also got some great opportunities. Deer Creek, as most of you know, has great opportunities there as well. And Schofield has walleye also. Did I mention it had walleye? Okay, good. Large fish. Tiger muskie is tiger muskie is a rarity.
But
Through
they're
the
awesome.
ice.
Come on, those things are sweet.
But it is an absolute hoot when you get one on. More times than not, you're going to lose them. It's still worth it. On this day, the ice was clear enough that I could actually see that fish beneath me going through the ice. And the first time I saw him, I was like, oh no. There's no way I'm getting this fish up. And if anybody knows Clint Brunson, who's one of our biologists, he was gracious enough to get wet to his shoulder to get that one up there through the hole, and thankfully had a glove on because he just reached down and grabbed it by the jaw and just. It's a 46-inch fish. It doesn't look 46 inches in that picture because I, apparently don't know how to hold a fish the way all my buddies
Tell by
do.
the head.
Thing's huge, man.
46-inch fish. Again, places that have perch and tiger muskie, and I'll mention it in a couple of minutes. Barotrauma with perch is real. It's a real thing. There's a lot of release of small perch, and they just don't do well because you're pulling them up from 30 and 40 feet off the bottom. So you've got a lot of these kind of floundering perch below your hole. And I'm fishing with perch eyes. And they're coming in and they're scarfing up all the perch that aren't making it that I'm releasing. And that's got to be the only reason why I caught them that day. Anyway.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Still fish. Pineview, Joe's, Schofield, Fish Lake, all great places for tiger muskie opportunities through the ice. Again, that's one of those ones where You're not going to catch them frequently, but if you go out there and you play the game of just solely targeting them, and have the mentality of this is indeed a fish of however many casts, 1,000 casts, you're gonna tack into one, and it's just an amazing fight through the ice. Again, especially when you can see. Brown trout, another one where you hear the stories about people going after brown trout and catching these monsters. I've seen the monsters in nets that exist in a lot of these waters. They're there, and the people that know how to catch them through the ice are catching them. So if you're intrigued with again going out there and targeting a big trophy, and spending the time to learn how to do it, brown trout, big sand wash, Jordanelle are two great places to go to do that. Special mention, kokanee. Kokanee for me is, in my house, the most edible fish there is on the smoker. That's the way it is. I love walleye, I love perch. Kokanee on the smoker, a little bit more difficult to catch through the ice because of their schooling, pelagic nature, kind of hit or miss. You can chase them a little bit, but you have a half an hour of fast and furious activity, and then they'll disappear like a ghost, like smoke. Places to go after them: Strawberry, Fish Lake, Causey, Porcupine, Electric Lake, etc. I mean, there's a bunch of places we're managing kokanee right now. And last but not least is one that, if you've never done it and you've got a lot of warm weather gear, fishing for burbot at night on Flaming Gorge is an absolute hoot.
Through the ice at night?
Through the ice at night.
Huh.
You can have multiple rods. I can't remember what the limit is right now. I don't have the guidebook in front of me. But more than your standard 2-pole limit. For me, that means I get to fish my 2 poles, and then I have some tip-ups in my arsenal from way back when, and I'll set up tip-ups and just sit there and have an absolute blast at 1 in the morning.
And that is cold, though.
There's no two ways about it. It is cold. Yes. It is cold. So if you have a Mr. Heater buddy and an ice hut, bring that and use that as your warming hut before you go out. Yeah. Anyway, that's a great thing to do too. So as you can see, I'm really geeked about ice fishing. I think it is an amazing sport. It is growing in popularity. And it's doing so for a reason, for a variety of reasons, which I hope I got that point across tonight. Because it's growing in popularity, we are seeing some issues. Crowding is becoming an issue at a lot of waters. That, I believe, is echo. Oops, sorry, thank you. That, I believe, is echo. And it's almost taken the fun out of it compared to what it was 10 years ago for me. But all I have to do is look a little further through the lens of my youth. And I grew up in the Northeast, and it was very similar to the Midwest. You get permits for permanent structures on the ice all winter. There are cities with roads that are named on the ice on Lake Champlain. I mean, so that really isn't that uncommon. It's just, it just seems a little odd in Utah when you used to be able to go up there and be basically the only person on the ice. Again, like I said though, waters are large enough, habitat is available enough, fish move enough, that you don't have to be in that city. You can witness it off in the distance and still be isolated and by yourself or with your buddies alone and not have to deal with that. This all started really with the COVID bounce that we saw in a variety of outdoor recreational activities. You had people that, for whatever reason, decided that I'm going to learn how to whatever, name the outdoor activity. It could be hunt elk, it could be go ice fishing. And this is no different than what you've seen elsewhere as far as the crowding. So just be aware of it as you get out there. It is an issue that we are facing, but like I said, I think you can skirt it and still have success. The other thing we're seeing, I mentioned perch as one of those go-to species, is that we are seeing impacts to our perch populations as a result, likely, of ice fishing. When you go out and fish for perch, you can catch males that are this big and you can catch females that are this big, right? Because there is that sexual dimorphism. The females are full of eggs. They're definitely larger fish in length and girth. They're healthier fish from an angler's perspective. They're fish that you want to take home with you if you're taking fish home. What we end up seeing is all of the females carrying eggs are the ones that end up on the ice. All the males go back down the hole, and you're actually impacting the population's ability to reproduce. I think you combine that with the fact that even if you're letting everything go, right? I only want to take 4 home, 5 home, whatever it is. I just want a meal's worth. And I'm going to still fish here and let everything go. Barotrauma, as I mentioned before, is a real thing. When you bring fish up from 40 feet off the bottom and their swim bladder is out of their mouth, you can pop their swim bladder, sure, and you can put them down the hole. The likelihood that they're going to survive is much less than if you were to catch them in shallow water. So that's an issue that we're facing. We're finding out that when people are keeping panfish, we have some pretty liberal panfish limits in the state. 25, 50, whatever it is. Species-specific limits. What we're trying to do to remedy that is actually do aggregate panfish limits, where we're encouraging people to still harvest 20 or so fish, but what we're seeing is we've got a diverse array of panfish species in the waters. Let's say bluegill, perch, and yellow perch, and black crappie. Whatever is most abundant, that's what's going to get grabbed. Whatever is least abundant is not going to get caught. So as those different species populations wax and wane, whatever is the most abundant and can afford that amount of harvest is going to be harvested. So we do these aggregate limits, and that's what we're trying to manage with on a variety of waters down to handle that. We're also thinking about reducing our limit on perch specifically in waters where we've seen that issue with dimorphism. Some other things that we're trying to do is create perch fisheries that are adjacent to one another and encourage people to go to one and take the pressure off of the other, and then alternate that. So encourage people to go to the other and take pressure off of the other. And that model is very similar to what you see with the rotational management efforts on the fly-in lakes in Canada, where they kind of shut one off for a little while, open another one up, and then switch the light switch, if you will, on those, switch the script, so that we're in a situation where you're resting one, allowing the populations to rebound, putting the pressure on another one, and kind of oscillating between those two. We're toying with that at Echo and Rockport here in the next couple of years, just an FYI. Guiding, I talked about that earlier. Anecdotally is becoming an issue. So I've heard through our state parks managers that they are actually charging guides to guide on their waters. State parks is. We don't charge guides anything. We don't certify guides as guides in the state of Utah. Parks certifies them as boat livery operators, but aside from that, there's no quality metric out there. And it's, in my mind, I'm starting to ruminate on this. If this is indeed something that's happening a lot, there needs to be a benchmark for the quality of guiding out there in Utah. You can't just, bye guys, I'm going to quit the Division of Wildlife Resources, I'm going to go guide. Right. Well, what makes me certified to be a guide? Well, I know how to fish. whoop-de-doo. You know, there's got to be a benchmark to provide a quality product out there. And it is, to be honest, if it starts becoming as common as I'm starting to hear, it is definitely a commercialization of the resource. I mean, for an ice fishing trip, if you go online right now, the ice fishing trips that are being booked out of Park City for a half day per person, is it $280? Jeez. For an ice fishing trip. Again, go back to the whole discussion about investment of equipment. I mean, really the only additional thing that you'll see guides out there, and in all likelihood if you see it, it's probably a guide, is that it's not a snow machine, but it's a little like self-propelled sled carrier. That's kind of something that's going on there. Anyway, not a huge issue right now, but I am definitely keeping my eye on it from a statewide perspective. Okay, that is all I have for you in that presentation. Once I get done with this, I do want to show you 3 tools that we have out there online, just to assist you with what was presented earlier as far as tournaments, finding the place to go fishing that you'd like to go fishing for a particular species or a particular experience. And let me get to those right now. I think I'm online. So yeah, this is going to be a little wonky because I'm not going to be able to show you from here. So,
Is it a website?
yeah, could you just type in Fish Utah? Yep. Okay, so what we've done over the past 4 years, how many of you have gone to this website before? Okay. Is try to build off of the Blue Ribbon Fisheries Advisory Council's Blue Ribbon Fishing website that we had 10 years ago, and create a kind of a trip planning tool, if you will, for anglers out there who are looking to either hotspot, go to places where fishing is fast and furious, go to a particular place where they want to catch a particular species, or just go to a particular region of the state or water body and figure out what's going on there as far as what's available access-wise, species-wise, all those different things. So put this in your memory banks as far as a tool to use when planning to go fishing for some of the experiences I mentioned in my presentation. Additionally, this tool allows you to go and provide us with what I'm going to call creel data. And when we go out and we conduct a creel survey, it's very expensive for us to go out and collect all that information, try to assess how many fish are leaving the water, what the catch rates are like, basically assess the quality of the fishery and whether or not our management is being successful. And we're only able to do it on a handful of waters because it's so expensive. This tool, what we're going to try to promote in the next couple of years is its use as an actual data collection tool for fish and anglers. So with this, you have the opportunity, if you actually go to a water body, you can put in a fishing report. And that fishing report is anonymous, it's just the data. It allows you to put in the number of fish you caught by species, the size of fish you caught, how long you fished during that trip, etc. And basically it does the exact same thing that we would do when we go out there and we interview you during a creel survey. Right? We're trying to find out how many hours you fished, how many fish you caught, what species, and what size. As we put that data together, it's going to allow us to assess the effectiveness of our management on a wider array of waters regularly, in addition to our traditional sampling with nets and electrofishing and other things. So encourage you guys to go in, explore this website, use that widget if you have an opportunity, and I'll probably come back and do a presentation on just that at some point in time once we get that rolling.
Are they going to look at putting this into an app? It's much easier if it had an app.
It's super mobile friendly right now as it is as a website, so it works really well. We thought about doing an app too, but this works phenomenally. The other one is, let's go to, call it fishing contests in Utah. I think that will get us there. Okay, go down to DWR fishing tournament, maybe? Nope, go back, sorry.
That's okay, I look really bad mouse.
No, you're good. Where art thou? Let me type it in here and see if I can find it. Okay, just type in fishing contests Utah, or fishing contest Utah. And then go to questions about fishing contests. So, holding a fishing contest in Utah as far as getting a certificate of registration or permit from the Division of Wildlife Resources used to be a pain in the rear end. It was all done via paper applications, scanned and sent in, attached emails and whatever it is. 2 years ago, we did a rule change for our fishing contests, and with that rule change, we also created this portal on the web that allows you to apply for your permit for your tournament online. And if you click on apply to hold a fishing contest, up there, takes you through a whole bunch of language that you read and tells you what this is designed to do, and then you hit get started, and it starts you down a path of a questionnaire, and you fill out that questionnaire, and at the end of the questionnaire application thing, it says, do you agree, with all the things listed here, which it talks about how much it's going to cost, You hit yes, it sends it to us, and then two of us will, one from the region and then one in the Salt Lake office, will give approval for this, and you'll be notified, and then you'll be sent an invoice that you have to pay with a credit card online, and you're done. So it's super slick, really cool, something we developed that you guys can use. And it sounds like you're kind of going to get into that mindset more in the coming year. So we look forward to seeing your.
And that's not just for ice, right? That's for
anything.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
And the last thing I wanted to show you guys before I leave you tonight is the Utah Record Fish portal. And if you go record fish caught in Utah, it gives you this whole table of all the fish caught that were caught and kept, caught and released, caught just spear fishing, set line, archery, etc. But similar to putting in for a permit for a fishing tournament, you can also do your application online here as well. And those applications will come directly to me for review, and we're good to go. And I won't say it takes up all of my time, but it takes up a decent amount of my time these days. It's pretty funny. I think we got 38 unique applications last year, and as I mentioned, we certified 11. And you know, for the ones that I don't certify, I send an email to individuals and say, hey, I'm sorry, either you were beaten out or it didn't make the cut because of whatever. Just be sure if you guys are out there and you're certifying records that the one bugaboo that I have right now, especially for catch and release, which a lot of you engage in, is put a tape measure next to your fish. I don't want to have to gauge how big your hand is relative to mine and try to measure it out into how many times it goes into the fish and guesstimate. No, seriously, if you use a tape measure, you know, then I can play the game of you can be a 1/4 inch more on a catch and release fish for a particular species, and I'll give it to you. But if I don't have a tape measure and you're saying it's a 1/4 inch more than the existing record, I'm not doing it. So, yeah, just be sure to use those tools. And we've got some more stuff coming, but those are the 3 tools we've got right now for you guys. Yeah.
I know we have the records for the sizes, but do we have any records for bite-pound tests?
No, we don't do the IFA records.
Okay.
So, yeah, we don't do that. We have individuals that have played that game repeatedly, and then it becomes, well, I'm going to beat so-and-so and such because I'm going to use...
Sounds like it's like 4 or 5 individuals.
2.5 pound test versus 3 pound test, and oh yeah? Yeah, so no, we just go with the size. For harvested fish, it's weight-based and has to be weighed on a certified scale. For catch and release, it's length-based. All right, so I give my ice fishing presentation. I showed you 3 widgets. What do you got for me? Questions? Yeah.
I know there's an abundance of perch, I'd say Fish Lake just as an example, but there's other reservoirs they say, the limit's this, but we prefer you not to keep them because we're trying to bring the population up, like starvation, as an example. What, is there a plan to say take some of those fish and move them?
So,
I mean, that would just make sense to me, but.
So when we have moved fish, we've moved crappie to starvation, specifically. We usually move fish from one place to another to establish a new population. So we'll do it multiple times until that population starts to naturally reproduce, and then we stop. As far as taking an excess of fish and moving them over here,
Because I know like a Fish Lake, it's ridiculous how many perch there are in there.
I know, but it's also cost benefit for us because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into harvesting those fish, treating those fish, moving those fish, stocking those fish, and then, yeah. So we like to let the fish do the heavy lifting for us. We can establish a population of spawning adults and walk away. We have moved tiger muskie once for a purpose because tiger muskie don't spawn.